Most boys grow up learning who they are through a steady stream of external feedback. Their sense of identity is shaped by praise from teachers, acceptance from peers, and guidance from family and authority figures. Approval becomes a mirror through which they see themselves. They're taught to fit into the framework others have prepared for them, with clearly defined expectations and socially accepted milestones. Belonging in this context is often a reward for compliance. Be good, be likable, be what others expect. But for the boy destined to walk the path of the Sigma male, the developmental journey looks very different. Often colder, lonelier, and more uncertain. His early environment is not filled with consistent encouragement or nurturing guidance. Instead, he's often met with indifference from caregivers, erratic or absent emotional support, and situations that provide more confusion than clarity. He learns to navigate a world that doesn't always make space for him, where silence replaces comfort and rejection replaces praise. But rather than breaking under this strain, something different happens. He adapts inwardly. He begins to craft a sense of self from the inside out. Where others might see abandonment, he finds space, room to think, to question, and to observe. Where others feel crippled by loneliness, he begins to value solitude. The lack of direction pushes him to construct his own moral compass, his own sense of right and wrong, of strength and vulnerability. The very things that would devastate others become raw materials for his growth. Hardship refines his emotional endurance. Emotional neglect sharpens his introspection. A lack of consistent praise teaches him to seek no validation other than his own. And as he moves through these formative years, he slowly begins to understand that his identity isn't something handed to him. It's something he must create himself. The ongoing debate about whether Sigma males are born or made continues to generate interest. But one truth emerges with clarity. A difficult childhood can leave an unmistakable imprint on the psyche of a boy who will one day embody the Sigma archetype. It doesn't simply toughen him. It fundamentally reshapes how he sees the world and his place within it. It teaches him to move independently, think critically, and survive without applause. In the exploration that follows, we'll dive into 8 key ways brutal childhoods forge boys into Sigma males. Each point reveals a piece of the psychological, emotional, and behavioral evolution that occurs when a boy grows up without the luxury of comfort, but with a rare opportunity to transform pain into purpose. This is not a tale of victimhood. It's the blueprint of a transformation. 1. The outsider mentality, a lifelong sense of disconnection. Even in early childhood, long before psychological terms like introvert, lone wolf, or Sigma male entered his awareness, the boy destined to become a Sigma sensed an invisible barrier between himself and the world around him. While his peers effortlessly engaged in group dynamics, joining cliques, mimicking trends, and laughing at jokes that signaled shared understanding, he often stood at a curious distance. Social rituals that others embraced as normal or necessary felt oddly unnatural to him. Birthday party games seemed forced, lunchroom chatter felt shallow, and classroom alliances felt more performative than genuine. Unlike most children, who instinctively seek connection and group identity as a form of social survival, the young Sigma male experienced a quiet internal resistance. His disconnection wasn't a conscious rebellion. It was an intuitive divergence. He couldn't pretend to care about what didn't feel meaningful. He found it exhausting to feign enthusiasm for things that others embraced without question. This early social misalignment, though painful at times, became formative. It ushered in an observational mode that would shape his psyche for years to come. In solitude, he began to analyze. He watched how people mimicked each other, how approval was distributed, and how groupthink often replaced independent thought. This wasn't bitterness. It was awareness. And as this awareness deepened, he began to accept that he wasn't broken, just built differently. This realization laid the groundwork for what would become one of the Sigma male's core strengths in adulthood: unwavering self-reliance. His outsider status, once a source of confusion, eventually became his psychological edge. 2. The failure of traditional education, a mind that defies standardization. From first day of school, the boy with a Sigma temperament often found himself at odds with the system. The traditional education model, linear, standardized, authority-driven, seemed mismatched with how his mind functioned. While his classmates dutifully followed instructions, filled in worksheets, and memorized for tests, The Sigma child's mind wandered toward deeper, broader inquiries. He could grasp material quickly, but once the challenge evaporated, so did his interest. He wanted to know why, not just what. He wanted to create, not just comply. This divergence was often misunderstood. Teachers saw a student who appeared distracted, disengaged, or even resistant. Parents were told he wasn't applying himself. Yet beneath the surface was a mind constantly in motion, one building private models of understanding, deconstructing systems, and solving problems in ways the curriculum didn't account for. The Sigma boy often felt understimulated, confined by rules that stifled his curiosity and punished his need for autonomy. As he matured, he came to a powerful realization. The institutions designed to measure intelligence and competence were not built for minds like his. Grades and credentials began to lose meaning, and in their place emerged a desire for real-world knowledge, for mastery through experience, experimentation, and independent learning. This early disillusionment with formal education shaped the adult Sigma male's philosophy. Knowledge is power, but only if it's applicable. He grew to value self-education over formal schooling, skill over status, and results over reputation. His path would never be paved by diplomas. It would be carved through curiosity, trial, and self-direction. 3. Premature self-reliance, when trust in others fails. For many boys who later grow into Sigma males, childhood trust wasn't just tested, it was repeatedly shattered. The adults in their lives, parents, teachers, guardians, often fail to provide the consistency, protection, or support that young minds instinctively seek. Promises were made and broken. Emotional needs were neglected. Guidance was vague, absent, or conditional. Over time, this pattern of disappointment led to a powerful realization. If they wanted something to be done, expecting others to follow through was a gamble. They were better off doing it themselves. This realization didn't arrive through philosophy or reading. It was absorbed through daily lived experience. These boys began taking small but significant steps toward independence far earlier than their peers. They learned to make their own meals rather than wait for dinner that might never come. They figured out how to repair a broken object instead of asking for help that would likely be delayed or denied. They found solutions to emotional or practical problems by turning inward, calculating, and adapting rather than hoping someone else would come to the rescue. What began as a survival tactic gradually evolved into a deeply ingrained philosophy. Dependence is vulnerability and self-reliance is armor. By the time they reach adulthood, asking for help becomes something they see as optional. Not because they're arrogant or antisocial, but because they have learned that self-effort is the most reliable form of security. This trait, often misinterpreted as aloofness or stubbornness, is actually a reflection of emotional scar tissue, a quiet reminder that their ability to function alone is not just a strength, but a necessity learned in the crucible of youth. For adaptability forged in chaos, reading the room before it explodes. For some Sigma males, childhood didn't unfold in predictable rhythm. Instead, it was defined by volatility, whether due to unstable home dynamics, financial instability, or emotionally unpredictable caregivers. A peaceful morning could turn into a shouting match by afternoon. A move, an eviction, a sudden change in school or routine could occur without warning. In these high uncertainty environments, the developing mind becomes alert, attuned, and hyper-responsive. These boys learned that stability was not guaranteed, and the best way to survive was to stay one step ahead of their environment. This early exposure to chaos didn't break them, it sharpened them. They learned to read subtle shifts in mood and behavior, to monitor changes in tone, posture, or silence. Every conversation became a source of data. Every unpredictable reaction from an adult became a lesson in psychology. They became adept at reading the emotional temperature of a room, spotting patterns others missed, and adjusting their behavior on the fly. This wasn't a learned skill. It was instinctual, a quiet intelligence formed from necessity. As these boys matured, their adaptive awareness remained, and even evolved. What started as a defense mechanism became a form of strategic intelligence. In adulthood, this manifests as the Sigma male's uncanny ability to assess environments quickly and silently. Whether walking into a business meeting, a social setting, or a new workplace, he instinctively scans the dynamics, identifies the key players, and adapts his presence with precision. To outsiders, This comes across as calmness under pressure or quiet confidence, but in truth, it is a polished result of years spent studying the unpredictable and surviving it. 5. The fuel of underestimation, when doubt becomes drive. In their formative years, many Sigma males face a recurring narrative. They were misunderstood, mislabeled, and underestimated. Their school performance might have been inconsistent, not because of lack of intelligence, but because of boredom with conventional structure. Their interests, often solitary and unconventional, didn't fit the mold of what teachers or parents considered productive. Rather than team sports, they might have spent hours tinkering with technology, diving into obscure literature, or building personal projects that no one else understood. This divergence in the norm often led to branding: underachiever, problem child, or unmotivated. Those dismissive comments left a sting. Painful, yes, but also catalytic. Unlike others who might internalize such criticism and shrink beneath it, the Sigma boy took a different path. The criticism became fuel. Instead of arguing back, he decided he would show them. He turned inward, sharpening his skills, committing to the work, and developing a quiet ambition rooted not in applause, but in the desire for excellence. He didn't seek to prove anyone wrong with declarations. He let his results do the talking. Over time, the fruits of his effort began to bloom. Self-initiated projects gained recognition. Unconventional skills began outperforming conventional ones. The same authority figures who once dismissed him began to take notice, not out of sudden respect, but because his results demanded it. This shift in perception cemented an essential Sigma belief: external validation is a byproduct of mastery, not a prerequisite for it. As an adult, the Sigma male carries this principle into everything he does. He doesn't chase recognition or craft an image for public approval. Instead, he invests deeply in competence, knowing that true ability will always rise to the surface, no matter how long it takes. He understands that doubt from others is not a barrier. It's a mirror reflecting his future triumph. 6. The collapse of role models, crafting an inner compass. Every child looks up to someone. In their early years, future Sigmas were no different. They searched for mentors, guardians, and authority figures to provide guidance and stability. But over time, they began to witness a disheartening pattern. Those they looked up often failed to embody the values they preached. Parents made promises they never kept. Teachers enforced rules they themselves didn't follow. Community leaders or relatives projected righteousness in public while engaging in contradiction behind closed doors. This repeated exposure to inconsistency and hypocrisy could have easily bred bitterness or distrust of the world, and for a time it often did. But instead of succumbing to disillusionment, the Sigma boy pivoted inward. If he couldn't rely on the moral compass of others, he would build his own. He began to measure values not by what people said, but by what they did. Over time, he constructed a code. Honesty was action, not declaration. Loyalty was consistency, not sentiment. Integrity was silent, not performative. This inward moral construction evolved into one of the Sigma male's defining traits: an internal compass that needs no external validation. Unlike many who shift their behavior to fit group ethics or social trends, the Sigma remains anchored. He does not advertise his values or seek moral superiority. He simply lives them. His decisions, though sometimes misunderstood, are deeply rooted in principles he forged for himself. This quiet integrity grants him a rare kind of freedom. He's not easily swayed by pressure, nor does he need applause to remain aligned with what he believes is right. For the Sigma male, values are not tools for signaling. They are tools for navigating, a map drawn from the wreckage of broken role models and built for a life of uncompromising authenticity. 7. The art of solitary dialogue, thinking in silence. For the Sigma male, solitude was never a void, it was a forge. While many children fill their quiet moments with distractions or daydreams, the young Sigma engage in something far more deliberate: internal dialogue. Whether he was sitting alone in his room, tucked into a library corner, or simply walking home with no one beside him, his mind remained active. These weren't idle musings. They were structured mental debates. In the absence of conversation partners, he became his own challenger and counselor, arguing both sides of dilemma, weighing every angle, and mentally rehearsing future decisions before they occurred. This habit, though invisible to the outside world, became one of his most valuable tools. It sharpened his reasoning skills, deepened his capacity for focus, and taught him emotional regulation. Instead of reacting impulsively, he processed events thoroughly before responding. When faced with stress, his first instinct wasn't to vent, it was to think. Over time, this mental discipline turned into a kind of private sanctuary. He didn't fear being alone. He relied on it. Solitude became the space where he clarified his values, planned his next steps, and recalibrated his emotions. In adulthood, this internal processing system remains central to the Sigma male's identity. He often prefers thinking things through alone before involving others, which some mistake as emotional unavailability or cold detachment. But in truth, it's a refined form of self-coaching, an internal operating system built from years of silent practice. He doesn't need a sounding board to know what he believes. He is his own sounding board. This quiet clarity is not a weakness. It is one of his most powerful forms of strength. 8. The obsession with authenticity, when words must match actions. Throughout his upbringing, the young Sigma male bore witness to countless contradictions. Adults in positions of authority would preach values they didn't live by. Kindness followed by cruelty, fairness tainted by favoritism, discipline undermined by personal indulgence. The gap between what people said and what they did became glaringly obvious to him, far earlier than it might for others. While many children absorbed these hypocrisies without much resistance, the Sigma did not. He took mental notes, formed judgments, and drew an unshakable conclusion. Words mean nothing without corresponding action. This early exposure to inconsistency didn't just disillusion him, it activated him. He resolved to be different. He vowed that when he said something, it would be true. When he claimed a belief, his life would reflect it. Authenticity wasn't a preference for him. It became a moral imperative. This obsession with alignment seeped into every area of his life. He began evaluating others through the same lens. A person's words were only as valuable as their consistency, and anything that smelled of performance or social theatrics made him recoil. This principled approach naturally limited his circle. He had no patience for flattery, superficial bonding, or relationships built on image rather than substance. As a result, his social world remained small, but fiercely authentic. The scarcity of connections didn't reflect an inability to bond. It reflected an unwillingness to compromise his identity just to fit in. The Sigma male would rather walk alone in truth than sit surrounded in pretense. In a world where appearances often trump character, the Sigma male stands as a quiet but relentless guardian of authenticity. His values are not meant for show. They are the structure of his life. And for those rare few who meet his standards, he offers a kind of loyalty and integrity that is rare, unwavering, and real. Conclusion: the furnace that forges independence. Childhood is often romanticized as a time of innocence and ease. But for many who grow into Sigma males, it is something far harsher. The early years are not cushioned by comfort or predictability. Instead, they are marked by hardship, emotional distance, and a constant undercurrent of survival. For most, such an upbringing might fracture the spirit or foster resentment. But for the Sigma, this very crucible becomes a place of transformation. His challenges do not define him, they refine him. The pain doesn't break him, it burns away everything unnecessary: dependency, passive acceptance, and beliefs inherited rather than earned. In this furnace of adversity, a boy begins to shape something rare: true independence. Not the surface-level independence of rebellion or reaction, but a deeply rooted autonomy forged through trial, observation, and relentless self-inquiry. As others seek approval from parents, teachers, peers, or society, the Sigma quietly detaches, forming a personal code not based on external rewards, but on internal logic and lived truth. He begins to understand that conformity is not peace, and comfort is not purpose. By the time he reaches adulthood, he is no longer defined by what he lacks, but by what is forged for himself. Fluency in solitude, mastery through self-education, and intuitive ability to navigate systems without being owned by them. While outsiders may see his distance and assume isolation, he knows better. The empty space around him is not a void. It is freedom. It is the absence of noise, the clearing of clutter, and the rare opportunity to build something entirely his own. In a world that pressures people to perform, to fit in, and to follow paths prepaved by others, the Sigma male stands apart. His journey through difficulty didn't just teach him how to survive. It revealed the depth of what it means to own oneself. And that is something no title, social circle, or trend can ever replicate. In the silence of his independence, he finds not loneliness, but sovereignty. A sovereignty too profound to ever trade for comfort, conformity, or applause. Do these ideas resonate with you? If you found yourself nodding along or reflecting deeply on the traits and experiences we explored in this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts. The Sigma male mindset isn't often talked about openly, and your perspective, whether you identify with it personally or have encountered in others, adds valuable depth to the conversation. Drop a comment below and let me know which part hit home the most for you. Have you seen these traits in yourself or someone you know? Your insights help build a community where authenticity and growth are prioritized over popularity and performance. If you're drawn to this kind of introspective, no-nonsense content around Sigma males, psychological strength, emotional intelligence, and high-value living, there's more waiting for you. Explore the other videos on this channel for deeper dives, actionable insights, and raw truths that cut through the noise. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay sharp, stay grounded, and stay unapologetically real. Until next time.